Hello, welcome back to Buckle Up. My name's Rob Wilson and this is a second generation BMW Z4. And is it the German equivalent of the Mazda MX-5? Okay, so let's start as we always do at the front, where we can see BMW have tried to emulate the styling of their original convertibles from back in the day, such as the 507, except these grills go horizontally rather than vertically. We've still got the traditional BMW lights with the two circles either side, although it is behind some plastic housing. And I do quite like, I have to admit, that the creases in the bonnet coming down towards the grills, leaving the badge prominently at the front. I do quite like that. I think this is probably the best looking Z4. Wasn't really keen on the first one, and I think the current one is a bit of a mess. But other than that, it is a bit droopy at the front. It's sort of like styled by Salvador Dali with his clocks. But it's definitely the better looking of the three. So what I think we'll do now is move on to the side and go and see what's going on there. Okay, so here we are at the side of the Z4, and I'll start with these rather nice 18-inch alloy wheels. They're sort of a standard design, but they are quite sporty. But what I do quite like is the fact that the sidewall is still a decent size. So we'll see if that has any effect on the ride quality when we drive it later on. As we make our way down the side, actually first I'll talk about the enormous size of the front of the vehicle, because it is quite the compensator, shall we say. There is an engine under there. We'll get to that later on, but I just wanted to point out just quite how much sort of metal there is here. Moving down the side a little bit, there is a indicator side repeater here, where you might perhaps have thought there might be a sort of a vent for the engine, but no, the side repeater's there. Then we've got some badging to indicate what this Z4 is. So we know it's a BMW, but BMW obviously have to remind us of that constantly. And then there is a badge that says S-Drive, which at first I thought said 5-drive, which made me think it was a 5-speed manual, but no, it's S-Drive, which indicates that it's rear-wheel drive, as opposed to X-Drive, which indicates that it's 4-wheel drive. And then it says
23i, which of
course designates that it's a 2.5 litre inline 6. I don't get that either. Why is 2.3 mean 2.5? Don't know. Working our way down, there's some nice creases going along the side, but there's not really too much else to talk about. There's a door handle that lifts up and out rather than pulls outwards, and then there's a fuel flap which opens like that and closes like that. That's sort of it. So let's move on to the back, where we can have a look at the boot as well. So here we are at the back of the Z4, and there isn't really too much sort of styling stuff to talk about, apart from the fact I think it looks like a previous gen 6 Series from certain angles. It's got the wraparound lights, it's got a nice crease that follows all the way down from the front of the car. It sort of follows the shoulder line all the way to here, and it's got quite big shoulders at the back. This is stupid. I don't know why, like, just no. So I guess what we'll do is just open up the boot, which I can do one of two ways. I can either do it on the key by holding a button and it pops, but only to there, or use the BMW badge. Ooh, isn't that fancy? And then I can lift that up, and here we see the actually rather capacious boot for a convertible sports car. It does appear that there has been some deliberate cutting out here for golfists among us. There aren't any here. Hope there aren't any watching. Yeah, that looks like it's been designed for golf clubs or bats. Now, obviously, this being a convertible, that isn't the whole boot situation, because of course the roof has to go somewhere, and it doesn't just fold back because it's not cloth like the first gen. It is a full metal hardtop with proper glass. So what do? You have to fold this thing down like that, and suddenly you don't have a boot. And if you didn't do that, you'd end up with the horrible sort of Star Wars trash compactor scenario where all of your stuff would just be squished. So yeah, that we're literally talking about that much of an opening when that is in place. So you need to think about that if you're going away for the weekend. It's probably best to load up your luggage first and make sure it all fits, and probably use soft bags. I can put that back, and then I can close it, and it's soft close as well. So if I push it up, oh, do you see that? That was a nice little bit of electronic action there. Anyway, let's go and sit in the well, I was going to say the cabin, but it's just 2 seats, so we can't test the back seats. So let's just sit in the front, see what it's like. Okay, so here we are on the inside of the Z4, and the first thing to say from my point of view is that I fit, and it wasn't very difficult to get in and out of, you know. So yeah, quite impressed with that. In terms of interior design, it's very standard BMW for the time period, and by that I mean that it's got the swoopy dashboard that is driver focused, and you've got your climate controls at the top below your vents, dual zone climate control, so I can have mine set differently from the passenger, and then below that you've got your BMW professional entertainment system thing, which means you can put CDs in and it's your radio and all that sort of stuff. No iDrive in this car. I was looking for my big wheel down here. It's not there because I thought, aha, it'll be up here. But no, that's just storage, which I guess is good on a convertible because that's the sort of thing that you're going to need. So let's stick with that, shall we? In terms of storage, you've got this area here, which is basically a cigarette lighter and ashtray. So it's basically big enough for about 5 Tic Tacs. Not very good. There you've got a bigger center console here, but it's not very deep. It's only about that deep because all of the transmission and everything will be going under here. So again, probably could do with a little bit more space. And because I am tall, there's no actual sort of real space here. There is a small shelf, but it's sort of got the first aid kit on it, and that's sort of it. You do have door pockets, and they are literally pockets because you pull them out to access them, but it's only really about that much sort of depth and space to them, so there's nowhere to put any drinks. In fact, there's no cup holders anywhere in this entire cabin as far as I can see. It's just, if you've got a drink, it's just going to have to go on the floor, because I don't think it will fit in the glove box. It might do, maybe. Going back to sort of the other elements of the interior, you've got some buttons down below the stereo system here for heated seats, parking sensors, and your roof controls, which we'll play around with in a minute. You've got a 6-speed manual gearbox, and next to that you have your drive mode selection, so you can pick sports or normal or sport plus, all of those things, and your traction control off button. No manual handbrake. It is a little electronic lever, which was sort of becoming the fashionable thing at the time. You do have a small cubby here, which is pretty much the perfect size for the key fob, but when you go to start the car, nothing happens. So you think, oh yes, because it can fit in there, it's keyless, but no, it has to go into a little slot here first. That does the ignition, and then when you click the starter button, it fires up. Now what I can demonstrate for you now is the roof. So if I push this little button here, and there we go. I now have no roof. So before we go for a drive, I'm going to open up the bonnet, we'll have a look at the engine, and then we'll go and see what it's like out on the road. let's open up the rather large bonnet, which is a little lever, and it's on gas struts. And here you can see the inline six beautifully arranged in a straight formation. So yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about the figures now, we'll do that when we're out on the road, but there you go, that's the engine. So let's close it up and drive it, see what it's like. Okay, so driving the Z4, here we go. Whoa. Well, it's certainly got a bit of a kick to it. I have put the roof back up for this bit just for audio quality. I know it's a nice day and therefore the roof should be down, but for narcissistic reasons, I feel like it's probably more important that you hear what I say to some extent. So, let's start with the figures, I guess. So it's a 2.5 litre 6-cylinder engine, no turbos, and it produces 204 brake horsepower and 184 foot-pounds of torque. So when this Z4 came out, this generation, this was the BOGO standard cheap slow version. You couldn't get a smaller engine or less power than this when it first came out, so I have to bear in mind that this is the slower version. That being said, 0 to 60 takes 6.6 seconds, so it's sort of very similar to what would have been like a hot hatch around that time, your Golf GTIs, your Honda Civic Type Rs, that sort of stuff, except obviously this is set up as a sports car. It's got a engine at the front, it's got rear drive, and it's got a manual gearbox in the middle. That's why I was sort of referring to it as a sort of similar proposition to the MX-5. I know that it's more premium and bigger and heavier. It's some 300 kilograms heavier than an MX-5 NC, but that's myself and my colleagues, were having a look on Auto Trader this morning, and a 2010 BMW Z4 is the same price, near enough, as a 2010 2-litre Mazda MX-5 NC. And we were trying to think, well, why wouldn't you buy the Z4 in that scenario? Now, one of the reasons might be that you prefer the styling of one or the other, but in terms of performance, this is a cut above, really. It's a full 1.5 seconds pretty much quicker to 60 than the MX-5 would be, which is obviously, you know, not unexpected given that this has got a much more powerful engine. But does it drive as nicely? Well, I'm going to get onto some country roads in a second so we can try more of the handling dynamics. Put my indicator on. Did you see that? Fellow BMWers out there. Ho ha ha, very funny, richly comic. Okay, let's give it the beans. Revs all the way to 7,000 RPM, but you can feel the weight over something like an MX-5. But obviously, there being no turbo, it is a lovely linear sort of push, surge. I think surge is the right word. It's a nice gentle surge forward, and obviously it being a 6-cylinder, the soundtrack is a bit more pleasant than the 4-cylinder of an MX-5. 6-speed gearbox is, I've never really got on with BMW manuals, I have to say. I don't know if it's just because I'm a bit tall for the setup, but I always feel like I'm pointing to the right diagonally, my feet that is, and then I sort of feel that the gear change is just a little springy and squishy. It's not quite as precise as gearboxes that I've used in other cars, like an MX-5, like my Lotus Elise, although I know I can't be biased on this and really compare it to my Lotus, because obviously that is up there with one of the best handling cars of all time. So I know I'm not going to get that because I don't get any of this luxury in my Elise, but it is still sold as a sports car, so I do need to make sure that it does feel and go and stop like a sports car should. So third gear, foot to the floor, and it's just surging. It's not like a neck breaker, it's not forcing me back into the seat, it's just gently pushing my back further into this rather quite comfortable leather seat. A lot more comfortable than my Lotus, I can tell you that. And refined, actually. You do get... The engine feels quite muted to me, but again, I'm used to a lot less sort of sound deadening than the usual driver. But wind noise, when you pick up speed, you can hear wind noise a little bit around the tops of where the roof connects. Now we're on some twisties. Let's see what the chassis and handling and everything is like. The suspension seems quite, I don't want to say soft because I feel like that's unfair, but it does maybe feel like it's been more set up for the American market than for here, because at lower speeds it seems quite jiggly and firm, and then the faster you go it seems to sort of squash itself about. Right, here we go around a corner. There is a mid-corner dip there, which usually unsettles cars, but this feels really quite planted. Over the crest, down a hill. Lots of camber changes and surface changes there, and it dealt with it all really well. Felt planted the whole time. Yeah, it's obviously fast. There's no denying that it's fast, but it's not as fast as other stuff that I've driven. Steering feel is relatively positive. You're not getting all that much back through the wheel. It's not, buzzing about in my hands, but it's not bad. Let's go for an overtake. That's the other thing I don't like about BMWs, is I just did the overtake there and the indicator doesn't self-cancel. So it was just staying on, and then you have to push it back down to turn it off, which then makes it go left. I guess that could maybe explain why BMW drivers don't use them, but okay then, that's enough playing about, so let's head back to our spot, and I'll do a bit of a conclusion for you.
Okay then, so summing up the second gen BMW Z4. Is it the German equivalent of the MX-5? In a word, no. This is definitely a more premium product, and if that's what you want, then go for this over the Mazda. But if you're more interested in driving dynamics, I'm afraid to say the MX-5 is better. There's just something more special about it. Crisper gear changes, more direct steering, but most importantly, I think, is the weight difference. It makes the Mazda the more enjoyable car for me, personally. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're there, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to see more content like this. You can find links to all our social media in the description, and if you want to support the channel, you can do so by becoming a member, joining our Patreon, or purchasing some of our lovely merch. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.